Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game So today I got a fun and exciting video for you guys tonight because we're taking a look at the recently completed and released Banjo Kazooie the Corrupted Jiggies. This is from a modder called Sora1, and they've basically taken the entirety of Banjo Kazooie and made a completely new game out of it, like we've seen with the franchise before from other modders. And just so you know, this is available now. It got completed a few days ago, and I will leave a link to the page below where you can find the patch for this one if you want to check it out. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. And this mod is absolutely massive. It has so many different worlds and so many different collectibles. It really does feel like a complete game as far as the overall length and complexity is concerned. And just so you know, this is being played via the MiSTer FPGA Turbo Core, which is not the recommended way from the modder, but I know everyone's going to ask, does it run on real hardware? Does it run on MiSTer FPGA? This ROM hack is targeting emulation, is targeting Project 64 to be specifically 3.0.1. So anytime you see a slowdown here, I did check in the background and it doesn't really slow down on the emulator, but it's one of those things, considering the channel has a lot of MiSTer FPGA focus and real hardware focus, I figured we'd kind of play it quote unquote the wrong way and see what we actually ended up getting. So as far as does it run on real hardware, yes it does. It's going to have a little bit more slowdown, but that just seems to be the fact that there's a lot of complexity in the geometry on the screen, and sometimes maybe it's not being called off as much as it could be. But as far as the game is concerned, it is definitely going to be a little bit more confusing and complex than standard Banjo Kazooie. There's going to be a lot of different areas, and there's going to be a lot of things going on, and I did play around with this in the background as well, just to kind of give it a little bit more time. And I will say, if you stick with it for maybe an hour or two, it definitely does open up. When you first get into the game, you're going to be kind of wandering around, finding where you want to go next. Once you actually get a trajectory on how the game is opening up, you're going to start finding new worlds, new areas, new challenges to explore. And honestly, this does feel like a Banjo Kazooie game, and the fact that there's a ton of collectibles, a ton of secrets, and a ton of places to go within the world. And as far as some of the glitches visually you see on screen, again, because it does target emulation, that's just going to be something that you do have to deal with if you're using MiSTer FPGA. Now, I did try this on my flash card, and I wasn't able to get it to boot on real Nintendo 64 hardware, but it could just be a firmware issue or something else with my flash card being incompatible. Leave me a comment down below and you tell me, of all the Banjo Kazooie ROM hacks you have played, which one is your favorite? Because honestly, we get a ton of different games in this franchise. And you'll see here as we move into one of the more open areas where we have a ton of textures and geometry on screen at once, the frame rate definitely does dip a little bit, because it is being played in widescreen. That isn't going to help it either, but even with the fact that this isn't really targeting real hardware, it does have a decent performance if you use that overclocked MiSTer FPGA core. And happy Dumplands here, I do love the visual theming, because Sora1's put in a lot of new models and a lot of new artwork that really do tell the story of what this new world is going to be, and obviously the Corrupted Jiggies is going to be part of the theming of the overall ROM hack. Now, every once in a while, I would say that the camera definitely fights you a little bit more than stock Banjo Kazooie, and maybe just because some of the areas are a little bit tighter and not as open as they would be in the original game. But honestly, in the N64 generation, there's no such thing as a perfect camera. It's always going to be a struggle in some way or another. And I do love that we have this dump monkey right here with the skull and crossbones on his back, and there is a banana, kind of a little bit of a nod to Donkey Kong 64, at least the way I see it, because this game is going to have a ton of different nods. Now, as far as the text is concerned, the story so far doesn't really open up all that much until you get later in the game, but it is one of those things. Give this one some time and you might find something to love. Now, this really isn't a review, it's kind of just taking a look at a new ROM hack, but as far as the game is concerned, there definitely is some promise here. Maybe some of the bugs, maybe some of the issues could be patched up in the future, but there's enough here to get you engrossed if you're a Banjo Kazooie fan. Now, if you never loved Banjo Kazooie or Banjo Tooie in the first place, I don't think there's going to be anything here or in any ROM hack that's going to make you suddenly love the game that you didn't love before. But you'll see there, this is where the camera kind of gets a little bit fiddly in the corners, and that's something I kind of wish the camera would just raise up a little bit more to give you a clear path as what you're actually looking at. And again, even though it's not supposed to be run on MiSTer FPGA, you do get some slowdown, but that's not anything that I'm really going to quote unquote strike the game for, because I am doing this in the way that was not advised, and I totally own up to that. But it is kind of a proof of concept as well that if there is a little bit more streamlining and efficiency in the code, that this could probably run on real hardware at a frame rate that's probably matching Banjo Kazooie, which is to say, not the fastest, but it does work. But a soundtrack sample one time, 45 seconds, and I'll be right back with a lot more banjo. Solid music, and it obviously sounds good coming out of the MiSTer FPGA core. And you'll see here we had enough notes so we can actually open up this gate and move over to the farm area. There are going to be obviously a lot of obstructions to seeing new areas, and they're all going to be basically checkpointed by certain collectibles in the game, which does make sense as far as Banjo Kazooie and especially Tui would be concerned, because they are collectathons. And it's one of those things I love that people go in and try to conceptualize entirely new experiences in games, because obviously Banjo Kazooie was a hit when it came out, and even though it can feel a little bit antiquated to play today just on the frame rate on real hardware, it is still a game that is absolutely fun. So when people go in and try to make something brand new out of it, it is definitely an admirable overall effort. Like I said, sometimes this game does feel a little bit like you're not quite sure where you need to go next, but other than that, there is fun to be had here, and I always try to review these things thinking about how many hours actually went in, because the developer here has been working on this since like 2023, so now that it is completed, this is basically the 1.0 version of the game, but I am sure you probably will see some updates to this. Leave me a comment down below and you tell me. I'm really curious, do you play a lot of ROM hacks, especially for N64, or do you just play the retail library? Because I feel like every time we talk about ROM hacks on the channel, more often than not it is N64, because the overall audience out there making new games out of existing games just seems to be prevalent on N64 more so than any other console of its generation. I definitely like that, because N64 has the thinnest library of any console of that generation. Saturn and PlayStation 1 have so many more games that it definitely is a system that deserves and needs more of these experiences. And as far as the size of this game, again, it's going to be absolutely massive. There's going to be secrets after you 100% complete it, but there's going to be 97 different Jiggies and over 700 music notes to collect, which definitely kind of adheres to that Banjo Kazooie gameplay aesthetic of just having to pick up absolutely everything you see, and that can be fun if you're into it. And honestly, I've never had an issue with the collectathons, even though at this point in my life I don't really have all the time in the world to 100% complete anything. But back in the day, growing up being a kid, if you told me you could play an extra 10 hours collecting anything in a game you possibly wanted to hit 100%, I would 100% take you up on that challenge, because I always enjoyed that. And you will see at some of the seams of the textures, again, we're getting a little bit of glitching, but that could very well be just the fact that we are playing this on MiSTer FPGA. And like I said earlier in the video, and I'll say one more time before you leave that comment, I understand this is not the methodology that the modder recommended to play this. It's supposed to be on Project 64, but it is fun to play around with this, and that's why on any of the performance related issues on the frame rate, I am just saying that that's probably just part and parcel of running it on MiSTer FPGA and not emulation. But again, if you want to run this on real hardware, it's probably going to be even slower, just because, like I said, we're using the turbo core for N64. And big thanks to Andy D for helping out with some of the captures today. And you will see one of those puzzle pieces on top of that fountain right there. You definitely want to look around a lot in the game, or else you're going to miss a lot of things, so definitely keep your eyes open. And that is kind of the fun of this. There's going to be so many different little nooks and crannies where they're going to hide things in, just so you can kind of find them. And there's going to be new features, there's going to be new movement tech, and like I said, there's going to be a lot of secrets in the game. But it's soundtrack sample 2 time, because there is new music as well, so go ahead and listen, and I'll be right back with more. I mean, it's fun music, and obviously I'm sure you can tell where it's from, and I love all the new characters as well. You can definitely see the creativity and a lot of the thought that went into this. Now again, because this is such a massive game, it doesn't feel maybe as concise as something like actual Banjo Kazooie or Tui, but you have to remember those are made by entire teams of professional developers back in the 90s, and they dedicated millions upon millions of dollars to making it. So when one modder goes out and makes something like this, giving you basically an entirely new full-length Banjo Kazooie game, you can kind of of forgive a little bit of the design issues that I think might occur in here. And again, it's not like I'm saying that this is a bad time. I'm just saying that at the start, it definitely maybe feels like it could be a little bit more structured and concise. But like any 3D open world game, especially one as big as Banjo Kazooie or the Corrupted Jiggies here, once you actually understand where everything is in the map and you get a good mental layout of what you're actually trying to do and go, it'll definitely become easier. So it's one of those things. This definitely has a lot of promise and it has a decent amount of fun. The things that I think could improve are just in some of the town areas, that camera being fixed up a little bit, just because it will absolutely fight you and kind of trip you up. And on some of the platforming, the camera again can be a little bit difficult, but these are ROM hacks, not completely brand new developed games. So of course the camera is going to be part and parcel what you get in Banjo Kazooie. So sometimes the toolset you're working with is going to be a little bit constricting, just like it would be on real hardware or in the original game, because that is what was made. But as far as ambition is concerned, this thing is absolutely massive, will give you dozens of hours of gameplay, and if you're a big Banjo Kazooie fan, I think you might enjoy it. But obviously, like I said earlier, if you don't like Banjo Kazooie, if you don't like Banjo Tooie, then there's nothing here that's going to convince you to like this game. But that's not a knock on the modder, it's just to say that you don't really love that series. So it's one of those things, I love seeing work like this, and I'm sure there's hundreds upon hundreds of hours put into this thing. And as far as whether or not you should play it, you can make that decision yourself. I find it fun and charming, could maybe use a few improvements here and there, but again, as more people play this, I'm sure the feedback will come in. The link to the patch is in the description below, so definitely check it out if you want. But we're done, and I'll see you guys next time. Hope you enjoyed the video. Bye bye.